Good evening. I'll call to order the Public Works and Safety Committee meeting of Monday, February 5th, 2018. I'd look at a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Mantee and second by Councilman Y. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Second item is approval of the minutes from the January 16, 2018 meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Danforth.
Second.
Second by Lallam. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 3 is consideration of bids received for wastewater equipment. And Mike Berger, wastewater superintendent, is here. Can you tell us about these?
Yep. Thank you.
And I think the way I'll do this, Mike, is look for a recommendation just for the whole group. This is just a recommendation.
Okay.
When we get to council, we'll take them one by one.
Okay. Sounds good. Bids were opened at 2 p.m. on Thursday, January 25th for the 2018 wastewater and solid waste equipment purchases. The first item on the agenda would be the sewer jetter truck. 4 bids were received for the sewer jetter truck. The low bid that meets the specifications is from Elliott Sanitation Equipment out of Grimes, Iowa, in the amount of $376,490, less $175,000 trade-in, for a net bid amount of $201,490. So we would recommend awarding this bid to Elliott Sanitation for the net bid amount of $201,490 with the trade-in. And the unit they bid is the newer version of the Camel Jetter, the machine that we're trading in. And the vendor tells us that they've got the trade-in pre-sold, and hence we received a trade-in value that's twice what we were anticipating. So.
Nice.
I like that.
Okay, with that, we'll move on then to the portable steamer, another wastewater item. We had one bid here, and the sole bid does meet the specifications. It's from Technology International of Lake Mary, Florida. A second bid was received, but it came in a day late, and therefore we could not open it or consider it in the sealed bid process. And so we'd like to recommend awarding this bid to Technology International in the amount of $76,720. And I would say this is a little bit over budget. This is $11,336,000 over budget. And I guess I failed to mention that under the jetter there, we are, with that great trade-in value, we are $238,510 on that truck. So we're still well under budget on these two items by $227,000 and change. So,
Great.
Mike, Mike, right here. Question for you. Is that going to be any issue with their location or anything like that for parts or warranty or anything?
no, they don't. We've got our current truck from them, and they've got the parts, and if we need warranty service, they'll provide it. So
Okay.
Thanks for asking.
Yep.
The third item is the biosolids improvements, and here bids were opened at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, January 23rd for the wastewater treatment facility biosolids dewatering improvements. 5 bids were received, and the low bid from Swanberg Construction of Valley City, North Dakota has been determined to be complete, and the design engineers here have reviewed these with us, and then H.R. Green recommends awarding the base bid to Swanberg Construction in the amount of $1,063,000. Here we are not awarding bid alternate A. Bid alternate A is a telemetry computer system software upgrade, and we're actually planning on replacing that computer next year, so we'll have new hardware with the latest operating system, and that'll support then the newest version of the telemetry software. So we are not awarding alternative A. And I think I'll elaborate a little bit on this particular large item. Of the $940,000 budgeted for this project, $839,000 was budgeted for the construction cost. And so this bid is about $224,000 over budget. The overage can be covered by our cash reserves. I've cleared that with finance. And I guess if you compare it to the equipment bids, we're still more under budget on the equipment bids than this one particular item as well. And I thought I'd maybe I did request a breakdown of the bid of the low bid from the engineers so that we could explain that to you a little bit on where the overage has come from. And so I'll move into that. And that's that green sheet, that little spreadsheet laying on your seats. Yes, that kind of is the breakdown. And now they're not comparing it to the budget. They're comparing it to the engineer's opinion of probable cost. And so in the center there is the design engineer's opinion of cost. To the left is Swanberg's bid, and on the right is the difference. And you can see that's where the additional costs have come from. And I thought I'd just touch on the four largest items. The first large item would be item number 3 is concrete, and they had estimated it at $24,810. The bid came in at $45,000 when they broke it down, which is $20,190 more. And the reason for this was that the contractor had a higher cost for the labor involved here. What we're doing in this project, as opposed to building a new building, we're repurposing a building that we abandoned in place back in 2011. It was a nice concrete structure. So it has a lot of channels through the floor where wastewater used to flow. And so there's a lot of labor, I guess, in setting the forms to fill these channels because essentially the contractor just had a higher labor cost for the concrete than the engineer's estimate. And that's how they explained it to us. On the piping, the process piping item number 6, they'd estimated $46,450, and it came in at $85,000. So this is $38,550 higher than their estimate. And the reason for that was that the majority of this piping is actually glass lined because of the abrasive nature of the sludge and so forth. The process pipe is lined with glass. So when they did their estimate, they requested a per foot cost estimate for the piping. And as it turned out, all these pieces they're not normally inventoried by the suppliers, so they were all a special order, and so and they're just not stocked by the supplier, so the engineer's estimate just was not high enough. The next item would be item number 8, which is the screw press, the process equipment, the valves, and the pumps and so forth. And here you can see that they estimated $470,040, and the contractor's bid was $104,960 above that. And what happened here is the engineers got prices from the vendor. This is not manufacturer. This is equipment supplier who gave the contractors prices, and subsequently, when the contractors came to that vendor getting prices, I guess in this case, they gave them a lump sum, which took some of the competitive advantage away from the prices that they'd given the engineers. And so, for example, the press itself was $35,000 more in this bid than what they had estimated it to be. There were 7 valves that accounted for $27,000, and then the rest were the pumps. And then the final item where they were off, the engineer's opinion of probable cost was much lower than the bid, was the electrical. You can see they estimated it at $63,550, and the bid was $61,450 above that. And that was simply the engineer's cost for that was low. They did base it on previous projects, so we're not sure why this bid is higher. But I guess when you look at the 5 bids, there's a spread about 8%, real tight range. So all the contractors seem to understand the spec, and so we believe the bids are good. We did get 5 of them, and they're pretty tight at 8%, which is about $85,550 spread on $1 million. So the engineer's opinion of probable cost, in summary, their opinion of probable cost was low, but we believe the bids are good and recommend, as the engineers do, to award this project.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I
Councilman
do.
Danforth?
Mike, did you compare the detail from the other bids to what you're supplying to us on here to see how the other bids fared, line item by line item?
We could not. It was bid as a lump sum. So what happened when we seen this disparity from their probable cost and the bid, I asked them to provide a breakdown of the low bid. The bids themselves are nice and tight. So we wanted to be able to explain to you the low bid that we're recommending. So I don't know what's in those other bids. It wasn't bid as line item. It was bid as lump sum.
we made the decision at some point to refurbish and use the old building versus a new building, right, an older
Correct.
building.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a cost analysis done at that time as to the reasonableness of using of refurbishing?
Yep.
And what was the cost difference between new versus
The
refurbished?
exact number would escape me. It goes back quite a while now, and it was hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was several. I don't know if Shane remember, but it was hundreds of thousands of dollars cheaper than building a new building.
That means if it's hundreds and we're hundreds over, we'd be about a tie. We'd have a new building.
we
No,
would've
I
been-
know that. I'm kidding.
In the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Right.
We eliminated that option fairly early in the process,
Yeah.
if that gives you an indication of how unreasonable it was.
Yeah, this is kind of a surprise. We just typically don't see a 20 or 25% difference in an estimate. So it's kind of surprising that they were as far off as they were with the items
This is
that
a
they were.
unique project, though. This isn't the kind of thing that gets built in every community. I mean,
Yes.
it's very unique.
Yes. We would still like to move forward with awarding the bid with those 5 bids being within 8%. That it's pretty clear that they're good bids. We do have the cash reserves to cover the overage, which it's there. And like I said, in addition, there was one other piece of equipment in wastewater that's not on the agenda because we didn't have to buy it by sealed bid. So we got 2 quotes, one from Sioux Falls, one from Watertown, and we're buying another piece of equipment also locally based on quotes. And that was about $3,900 under the budget price. So all in all, the equipment that we're purchasing in wastewater are $231,000 below our budget. The two bids I just mentioned and one quote that you're not seeing tonight. And we do have the cash reserve, so their estimate was definitely low.
That happens sometimes. Are there any other questions? I'd like a motion to recommend approval.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Manti. Moved by Beth. And second by Josh. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thanks. Okay, item number 4, consideration of bids received for solid waste equipment. And I think we'll do this the same way. Mike?
Yep. Thank you. Bids were opened at 2 p.m. on Thursday, January 25th for the solid waste equipment as well. We received 2 bids for the automated truck chassis. The low bid without trade that meets the specifications is from Allstate Peterbilt of Fargo, North Dakota, in the amount of $124,858. And so we recommend awarding this bid to Allstate Peterbilt in the amount of $124,858 without trade-in, because taking the trade-in on the body bid results in the overall lowest price for the total truck. And so the next item with this truck then would be the body, if there's no questions on the chassis. By the way, both chassis did meet our specification. When we get to the bids, there's several that did not meet the specifications. 5 bids were received for the automated truck body. The low bid that meets the specifications is from Sanitation Products for the curb tender. We do have 4 curb tender garbage trucks in our fleet, and it's in the amount of $116,733 less $22,000 trade-in for a net bid for the body of $94,733. So we'd recommend awarding this bid to Sanitation Products in the net bid amount of $94,733 with trade. And just to give you an idea, the total cost of this truck with the body and the chassis combined is $219,591, and that is $17,552 than the last truck bids we awarded in 2016. So it's a good
more or
price.
less. Did you
Less.
less?
Mike, that's a net higher price than Olympic.
What's that?
That's not the lowest price.
Right. Oh, so I'll elaborate on that. The Elliott Equipment bid the Scorpion. That did not meet the specifications
Okay.
in 5 areas. I think the Elliott, they're the ones we just recommended for the jetter. We were not aware of them being out there in Grimes, Iowa, selling these bodies. I think when they saw the jetter bid, they also bid the body. But this is a body we've never seen before, and so it did not meet our specifications in 5 areas. I think this coming year, As we go to the next process, we buy another truck in 2019. We'll work with them and see if the spec can be adjusted. There's some stuff about their truck we're just not familiar with. And one item, they were over a maximum, so it did not meet spec in 5 areas. Could not award that. And the second truck then, the Sidewinder by Olympic Sales, that they said it didn't meet it in 10. They checked no in 12 areas, and when we looked at the bid, actually 2 of the areas they checked no, they did meet it, but there was 10 areas where that truck does not meet our specification. And the most major one is the lift arm itself. They do not have a 2,000-pound lift capacity, and we go from 95 gallons up to 450-gallon containers. So that's just an area of the spec we would not reduce that. And it's a different style truck that actually tips to dump as opposed to one where it's a full ejection. So, but there was 10 areas where the second bid did not meet the specifications. So the low bid that meets the specifications is the Sanitation Products of Sioux Falls, the curb tender power pack. We have 4 curb tenders, and that was $116,733 less than $22,000 trade-in.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, is that trade-in, is that for the body or is that for the truck?
That's for the whole truck.
Okay. So the other one, they wanted just the chassis, no body for the Peterbilt?
Yeah, the Peterbilt just bid the chassis. We've done it this way for a number of years, and it's worked out pretty well for us. The chassis vendors want to sell you a chassis. In this case, the Sanitation Products, they sell garbage trucks. They sell the bodies, so they have customer base that's a great trade-in value. We budget a $6,000 trade-in value on these trucks because we literally wear holes through the steel in the sides and so forth after 7 years on routes, literally. And so I think that's a great trade-in value.
So we're just taking that trade-in from just the truck and keeping the whole body. We ship the whole thing down.
Yep, we're giving Sanitation Products the whole used truck, and they're going to discount their price $22,000, and then we'll put that $94,733 body on that Peterbilt chassis for a total cost of, I think I said $219,000 and $591. And again, that is $17,550 less than the last truck we bidded for a whole truck. So it's a good price.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then we'll move on to the 95-gallon garbage containers. Here, the low bid that meets the specification is from Northern Truck Equipment of Sioux Falls in the amount of $50.88. So we'd recommend awarding this bid to Northern Truck Equipment in the amount of $50.88 per container delivered to Watertown. And this is the Cascade container, and we have purchased this container multiple times over the years, so it works very well for us. And here, the low bid, the IPL MasterCard up there at $48.12, did not meet the specifications. And it only didn't meet the specs. Of course, they've got to meet the specs for me to recommend awarding them, but they did not meet the wind tunnel specification. And as you know, on a windy day, some of these containers tip over. So on our specification, we have a requirement that your container must stand up to a 40-mile-an-hour wind from the front, the back, or either side. And here, the low bid amount, the $48.12, IPL Incorporated, their container would stand up to a 37-mile side wind, would not stand up to a 40-mile-an-hour side wind. Okay, and whereas the low bid that meets the spec, the Cascade from Northern Truck Equipment, that stands up to a 51-mile-an-hour side wind. So that's 15-mile-an-hour more wind than this other container from a side wind. It's very important to these containers. As you know, they do blow over from time to time as it is. And similarly, from the front and the back, the low bid, the IPL container, will meet the 40. That's all it meets. But the low bid stands up at 49 from the front. And from the back, the low bid stands up at 60 miles an hour, whereas the IPL, the low monetary bid, will only stand up at 51. But they did not meet the 40 all-around minimum, and so the Cascade's a much more stable container.
Is this bid good for a year?
Yeah.
And how many do you anticipate purchasing?
Let me correct. I think we cut them back to 120 days on it in the spec because it's based on oil prices.
Oh,
and so,
okay.
yeah, it used to be a year, but we reduced it, the term.
You generally buy once a year?
Once a year, yeah.
Okay.
We're budgeted for $49,400, and we're going to buy about 950 containers at $50.88. So
Okay.
it's within budget, yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Now, the last item, we have one bid for a 3/4 ton crew cab four-wheel drive pickup from Watertown Ford Chrysler in the amount of $29,184. There's no trade-in. The used unit will be transferred for the fire department, and so we'd recommend awarding this bid to Watertown Ford in the amount of $29,184. And this is for the Ram 2500 Tradesman crew cab 3/4 ton four-wheel drive. We bought two of these trucks last year, and this is actually just $291 more than it was for each truck last year. I checked it against the state bid, and the state bid didn't have a long box, which we're buying here, which we spec'd, but the state bid for a short box was $108 more. And I also looked at the National Auto Group for their prices, and this price beat them all. So it's the best price out there, and it's a local price. So
Great. Are there any questions?
Mike, what are they using that truck for?
this one is the Landfill Supervisor. You'll notice, well, I would point out we budget like $39,000 for it, because what we'll do with this truck is we will put a snow plow on it so that they can use it around the landfill for plowing the roads, in addition to heavy equipment, depending upon how much snow there is. We put running boards on it, emergency lights in case it comes into town and it's in traffic and we have to stop and grab containers. So it'll be a multitude of uses for solid waste collection crew and the landfill crew. But most of the time, the landfill supervisor will drive it until he gives it to someone else to use for a project.
All right. Any other questions? Thanks, Mike. Is there a motion to recommend approval of these?
So moved.
Moved by Lallam,
Second.
second by Y. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. All right. Item number 5 is discussion on the cost estimate for the gun range project number 1619. Shane?
Thank you, Mayor. Pete, would you put my screen up? It's been a while since we looked at this, so just to kind of refresh everybody's memory on where the shooting range is. This is 20th Avenue Southeast, or the truck bypass, as we all like to call it by. 17th Street Southeast is going north here. It comes out up by the Watertown Ford. This is where we built the new softball complex, and the storm water pond is that portion. And the soccer complex is up here to the north as well. So Big Sioux River bounds this property on the west, and Willow Creek bounds it on the east. The primary portion of the shooting gun range will be up in this former area used by the wastewater plant. I'm going to switch views here a little bit. This is the most recent footprint, if you will. It's a little bit hard to see as it was a copy of a dark photo, but this depicts 2 pistol ranges to the west and 2 rifle ranges to the east. And out here that's not shown is a shotgun range. I will flip to another view here to kind of make it a little easier to see. Boy, this thing is touchy. Okay, so we need to ignore for now the 5 lanes at 300 yards and the 5 lanes at 200 yards. Those are not part of the current plan. So we have 2 100-yard bays, the 2 pistol bays, and this shotgun area is primarily what we received cost estimates on currently. So any questions on the layout before we go to the numbers of the costs?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, I'm moving on. So then, the latest round of cost estimates that we received to do the 2 pistol bays and the 2 rifle bays and shotgun area, the current estimate is $823,812. There is a notable 10% contingency, which is standard procedure by estimating procedures with the game fish and parks and other government agencies. So there is a factor of $75,000 in there roughly. current labor and materials is estimated at approximately $750,000. So with that, there are some things in here that we've identified that possibly could be done by local entities. We haven't vetted those out quite yet, so we're just using these raw numbers as the discussion point. So again, $823,000 to do the whole project as presented. We did look at reducing the one rifle bay out of the bids for now, and that would reduce the price to the $615,400 range. The going into this phase of the project, I believe our and you're going to have to help me, Mayor or Kristen, our budget that we had available was
525.
525. Okay, that's
So we're about 300,000
short.
short.
Correct. That's my update.
That's it?
Let's talk.
Okay, so Game Fish and Parks has been very helpful in working on this project. They want it as much as we do, and they've offered that if we can come up with $75,000 to bridge that gap of $300,000, they will find the other $225,000. And so that's an offer. That is a really awesome offer. And this is a very important project to our community and to the whole region, really. And it's a kind of a unique project to have a Game Fish and Parks partner with a municipality to do this. You know, we can cut back on what we build and not get entirely what we want on this outdoor range. But I'm thinking that with some careful planning, and Shane was we did have some offers. I don't know if you've had a chance to see if that offer is still good. We've had some offer of help from local businesses to participate in the cost on some of these items that you can see. If you have eagle eyes, you could probably read that. And the city can probably do some of the work as well. These are estimates, and they could be off quite a bit. We don't know. That this isn't work that is done regularly, and it's swings with conditions, how busy the contractors are and such. But anyway, we think this is a realistic estimate, and need to know if the committee thinks that we'll be able to find $75,000 more than our budget to move forward with this. And Kristen and I talked about it a little bit, and we think that we'll be able to do that within our 212 budget. Just want to know if you have questions, and is this a deep concern to you, or how are you feeling about that? Not hearing a lot of noise.
Have we've looked at some possible private fundraising?
We haven't looked at any of that yet. This is purely the bid came out, or well, it's not a bid, excuse me, the estimate from the final design is higher than our budget. So at this point, we think that we will probably be able to build the project. Even with the extra amount, we'll be able to find the money. Game Fish and Parks is coming up with the lion's share of the overage. We may come in quite a bit lower too. We don't know. And if we go out to bid on this project and we have an even more serious shortfall, that would be the time to start soliciting. I mean, we can ask people to be prepared to jump in and help us, or I mean that'll be a bridge we'll have to cross once the bids are open. We haven't gone to bid yet. This is a design level estimate.
How is this facility going to work? Are we going to rent that out, or are they going to be open to the public just for use? I'm not
It's
sure.
just open. I think it was anticipated that it
Just
would
open?
just be open to the public, and we'd have a gate. Is something we talked about at the last meeting, so that we could close it off during certain times if we wanted to.
So does does this, two things on this, on the bid then. Does the $300,000 shortfall include or not include the 10% contingency?
It includes it.
It does.
I mean, and these are rough numbers, so
The next question then, if we're going to have a gate, we need to have a fence. There's no fencing on this to
well,
close
actually,
in the perimeter of this?
No, it's not like you could just drive around the gate. Though this is built, and I don't know if you can bring the GIS back. This is an area that was former sewer ponds, and there are berms in there, a lot of high spots, and the road will be pretty high. This is in the floodplain, and so it won't be easy to go around. Some people can do that. I mean, I don't know that even putting a fence would keep people out necessarily.
Okay, you can look here, if there's a fence along the existing north border of it. And so that fence could stay in place, and then we would put a gate like what's here, only probably a little easier to navigate. This is the current gate that goes into the site right here. So we have a gate. We might look at whether this is a good enough gate or not. Right now this has got a chain and a padlock, which isn't the ideal case, but it might be good enough for what we're going to do. But if we make this wider, that's where that gate would maybe come into play or not. But there is a fence already. We're thinking that if, for instance, if there's going to be high water, that we would want to keep people out of the floodplain in there maybe, or if there's an event that we're particularly interested in protecting the folks that would be north of here, we could close it down for a few hours of a period of during a tournament or something. I mean, we could control it if we choose to.
Do we have possible noise buffers in there between that? I mean,
We did talk about planting trees as a buffer along this north side of this property to kind of help shield that a little bit. So,
I'd be a little nervous if they're out playing baseball and all of a sudden guns start cracking off.
yeah,
behind
no,
them.
we would try to do some type of buffer. We've talked about that. So, good question.
The buffers for the bullets will, to a certain degree, but yeah, there are other enhancements that we can do. We can spray some foam in there, and there's other things that we aren't planning to do in this budget that we can do in the future to reduce the noise element.
So this is in a flood zone.
Yes.
So there's an indoor range that would have to be.
This does not include an indoor range at
No?
this time.
Okay. Okay.
In the future, we might put an indoor range, and that would have to be elevated above the floodplain. There will be a toilet that will be above the flood elevation. So buildings have to be elevated, but stuff like this does not have to be elevated. So if it's inundated with flood water, probably going to be closed.
So a recommendation enables us to go out for bids. So then we
Yes.
see what our
Yes.
true costs are.
Yes, and I don't know if Shane kind of alluded, there were two estimates given. One was for a reduced project, and it does require a little bit different design. And the Game Fish and Park wanted a little more guidance from us at which direction we were planning to go. It isn't as simple as just doing it with an alternate. We would prefer to bid it out with an alternate, but if we can build this whole project, then I think that's what I would recommend is going for what we actually want and not trying to pinch a penny down and have something that doesn't completely meet our needs.
I would agree with Madam Mayor, because we've been talking about a gun range for a very long time. We have people who have been really looking forward to being able to use it in addition to the citizens. And I think you're right. If we have an opportunity to partner with another organization in addition to our own or departments that would need to use it, I think we should work with them and take advantage of their generous offer. And I think to do anything less would kind of be a, I don't know, slap in the face to Game Fish and Parks. I mean, I think that it's important. I can't reach you from there anyway. So, but No, but I just do believe that their generosity is something that just shows us that this is something not only the community wants, but also the agencies that operate in this area.
That's right. That's a really good point. And Game Fish and Parks is 100% behind this, and their support is really important to us. And we couldn't do this project without their assistance. We are partners, and we're not the only player in this.
What is the difference between the two plans that are on here? The plan we want, which is the one we just discussed, and then the secondary one.
One of the longer shotgun ranges is eliminated in the cost-saving proposal. So if you can bring that up.
Let's see, where was I at?
The far lane would be eliminated.
Okay, so the two far right ones are already gone. It'd be this 10-lane, 100-yard bay would not exist if we went with the lower cost estimate. So then it would be this 100-yard bay and the two pistol bays and the shotgun.
So that's kind of an old view.
Yeah,
it's been revised, but
I don't have the most current version of this, but
Councilman Vilhauer?
Shane, as I understand that, though, okay, we're eliminating the two right, that's not an option. But
Correct.
would it still be expandable? Because I think in the far right one, they're made mention about being expandable. So would that still be possibly an option at some point down the road?
yeah, you can see by the dark picture here, there's still space available for an additional lane in the future.
And there's space available, too, for a future indoor range if we would ever decide to move forward with that. Councilman White?
There would never be a road then on that.
There's a driveway. It's hard to see in that drawing. It's a yellow
Right here.
line that comes out
Right.
basically opposite 17th, where 17th Street comes into 20th Avenue South. And it curves over.
Yeah,
He's talking the east side.
Where
of
the
that.
the
It's
trees
a
are.
road that runs along there.
Oh, probably not. If you looked at the GIS, we are in the floodplain pretty
Oh.
thick. This is not like prime development property. This is a good use of floodplain to do something like this, which is not harmed by floodwater. It may be, can you turn the floodplain on, Shane?
I can.
It may, put it out of commission for a while if it's got water in it, but the yellow hatch is hard to see, the Willow Creek floodplain. If you expand the floodplain box over there, the plus next to it, and go down to Willow Creek, there you go. There's a couple floodplains converging here. And so this is not a highly developable area for other than outdoor recreation type things.
sure. One more question I have then. So no building, but a parking lot? I mean, is that
There will be, yes.
is that in the?
The parking is in this,
Gravel.
Okay.
yes.
It's just gravel then.
Yes.
It's not a paved. Okay.
Okay.
Councilman?
I understood at one time Lake Area was really interested when I was going to those meetings. Lake Area was really interested in building it, as well as providing ground dirt work and so on. Is that still an option, or when did that disappear that they were willing and able to do that?
We did fully vet that out, and Lee probably has a little bit more to add too, but that discussion was that the timing of the students and their availability relative to the construction timeline that we would want for a project like this didn't overlap very well. So they don't do work during the summertime. They do work in the early spring and in the fall. And, for us to practically go after a project of this size, it wouldn't work well to incorporate their work.
And Dan, just to know, there are some options, or some things in this project that could be done by them later. Once we get this part of it done, we decide we want back walls, we can contract or work with them to do it on their time frame.
because the biggest issue we've always had is we really don't know a time frame of building it, so it's hard for the instructors. They try to get their curriculum out a year ahead of time. So if we have something down the road we want to add, I'm sure they'd be willing to work with us.
Councilman Vilhauer?
I guess I've got a follow-up question to what you just asked, Dan, and maybe that's what I had in my mind too. But I thought the last time we visited this issue, I know it's been some time, I thought too we had other partners that were looking at possibly coming on board to help pay for this, other than the offer from the Game Fish and Parks on the differential. Am I mistaken on that, or
No, we did. Okay, really, and I don't mean to make this sound flippant or anything like that, but early on, we basically vetted any and all options. We even talked about the National Guard and their equipment coming in and working and different things like that. I mean, this was a really big scope project that we wanted to involve as many partners as we could. And by the time we shucked all the details out, the National Guard wasn't going to be able to be available. It wasn't going to be practical for LATI's dirt work people to efficiently work on this project. So we did have all those discussions, and this is what it's boiled down to, is where we're at today. And I do have one partner to reach out to see if they want to cost share in it. They committed to this project before. I haven't had a chance to re-engage them to get a confirmation on that, but it's, in the grand scheme of this, it's still small dollars. It's not big dollar stuff. So, and ultimately, most of our sponsorship stuff that we talked about earlier on too, just to recap this in seconds, was mostly related to the building. The outside range was really heavily driven by Game Fish and Parks and that grant funds that they made available to us. And so really this whole scope of the project is now focused on the outdoor range and using those grant funds and other local funds to get this project built. And that's where we're at today. Okay.
Are there any other questions?
what's a realistic timeline on this if we do put it out for bids and move forward with it?
Well, go ahead, Mayor.
This is a 2018 construction season project, and we're a little bit behind schedule, but we're still in the 2018 time frame. The seeding and stuff might be dormant seeding by the time we get to that part of it, because it'll be into the fall. Any other questions?
I'd make the motion to move ahead and put it out for bids and see where we come in at. I think we can raise that 75,000.
Okay.
Second that.
Thank you. Motion by Lallam, second by Manti. Any further discussion or questions? Finance Committee feeling comfortable too? I know you guys aren't voting on this, but all right. Okay, I'll ask the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, item number 6 is consideration of change order number 1 for the wastewater treatment facility digester rehabilitation project number 1612. Shane, you want to take that? And Mike's here if there are any questions. Or are you going to handle that, Mike?
I'll get us started. So, we've had the primary digester rehabilitation project underway since about June of 2017. And during that work, they found that the lid or the roof was out of round. And if we wouldn't have addressed this issue, it would have scraped the coatings off that we were planning on painting on the inside of the surface as they lowered it back into place. So the bulk of this extra work is related to re-rounding that cover so that it would fit inside the footprint of the building without causing further damage. And then there's some discussion on additional days for the contract. We did allow, or the discussion went to 5 extra days for the fixing the cover out around. And then there was another discussion where the contractor had to wait for an inspection by H.R. Green, and that timing of that inspection delayed them by approximately 3 working days. So we recommend adding 3 days to the contract for that as well. I'll say that the overall change order results in an increase in the contract price of $7,735.84 and adds 8 days to the contract time. And I'll leave it at that. If you have any specific questions, Mike can help with the details.
All right, is there a motion to recommend approval?
Second.
Moved by Danforth, second by Lallam. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thanks. Item number 8 is consideration of, item number 7, consideration of amendment number 1 to the agreement with H.R. Green to include construction, administration, and observation for the wastewater treatment facility biosolids dewatering improvements project number 1715. Who's taking this one?
The $101,000 is the amount we budgeted for these construction services. I guess the actual price at the end of the project will vary depending upon the hours they put in. Could be a little less, could be a little bit more, but this is the budgeted amount for the construction observation on this project. And it's about 9.5% of the bid price. So,
Okay, and one thing too, if we approve the contract with Swanberg, this is the construction observation and part of the contract for engineering services that covers the construction portion of that project. So we strongly recommend that this gets approved if we're going to award a contract to Swanberg.
All right, I'll look for a motion to recommend.
So moved.
Moved by Y, second by Manti. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 8, consideration of engineering contract with Infrastructure Design Group for the Marina Bay Drive Bank Restoration Project number 1812. Shane?
Thank you, Mayor. I reached out to Infrastructure Design Group because they're primarily working on the bike trail in the same vicinity. Felt that they would be a good fit to incorporate this work into their scope of that a little bit, or into the same region. If you look at the drawing that I have up on my screen, this area right here that you see is where some erosion of the bank, and this bank is sloughed into the Marina Bay right here. What's happening is a couple things. There is a culvert that's supposed to come through here, but it must be partially filled or isn't efficiently moving the water from this side of Marina Bay Drive into the marina. And so it spills out over here and is causing some erosion. So we want to look at that, get that bank restabilized. Also, there's a homemade guardrail right here, and you can see that we've put monster blocks in there to kind of create a temporary guardrail extension. So we're also going to look at whether the guardrail can be extended in this location. So with that, we asked IDG to put together a proposal for us. Their proposal is $6,000, which is fairly reasonable. They're going to work with the permitting with the Corps for that fee as well. So should be a good fit.
This is a small amount, and it doesn't require council authorization, but thought it would be just for your information to bring it forward. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Lallam. Second by Manti. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Okay, item number 9 is discussion on permitting storm ponds in floodplains. And I'm going to let Shane talk about this, but first I just want to give a little bit of background on this. We require detention ponds and stormwater quality ponds as a for development and any kind of development that creates an acre of impervious surface. And these facilities usually go at the bottom of a property, at the low end, and in some cases they're in the floodplain. And the floodplain is not caused by the facility. We're talking about the floodplain for a river or a lake, and the floodplain will have different recurrence levels of flooding. So a 100-year flood is a pretty major flood. A 10-year flood is something that we can expect on the average once every 10 years. 50-year flood we'd expect once every 50 years, and so on. So we are looking for guidance. Our manual does not address this question. If we put a stormwater facility in the floodplain, it will be inundated at times from whatever the major water body is. And at what level are we comfortable doing that, allowing the storm pond to be inundated? Now, if it's next to a river or a stream like the Willow Creek that he's showing here, water could be moving. So if the pond structure itself is underwater, it would be saturated, which weakens the soil, and then moving water next to it could possibly tear it out. So if it's next to a lake, you don't have the current, but you would have wave action, and the waves could wash away an earthen structure. And most of these are earthen structures. So we actually have one that's been proposed in this area in the Willow Creek floodplain for the Morris addition, and part of East Park addition drains to it. And the question is, at what frequency are we comfortable allowing this facility, which the city taxpayers will be responsible for owning and maintaining, to inundate and potentially be washed away? So I asked Shane to survey some other cities and see if they have a standing policy and what the policy says, and I will let him tell you about that.
Yeah, apologize for the, we weren't able to reach a lot of folks. They were busy or tied up at the time. We did attempted to talk to Mitchell, Aberdeen, Huron, Sioux Falls, Pierre, and Yankton. A couple of them weren't able to get back to us. Mitchell's response was that they haven't had to deal with this type of issue to date. They probably will at some point in their history. Huron also said it has not come up, but most of Huron is much higher than the James River Valley, so may not be a huge issue there. Aberdeen says they have not had to deal with this yet, but they felt that if they had to, they would allow it and would ask for documentation on how the pond would function in case of a flood. And so they didn't say that they wouldn't allow it, but they haven't actually approved one yet either. So that's kind of a quick summary, and I think Aberdeen would try to follow their BMP manual as best as they could through that scenario too. We did not hear back from Sioux Falls, which was one that I was really anxious to get, and unfortunately didn't get information back. I would like to share a little document that we put together just to kind of give you an idea, and this kind of surprised us a little bit. What we plotted the linear, or it turned out to be linear, mostly linear, but this blue line represents the Willow Creek floodplain study that was done a number of years ago, and these dots represent the 5-year, 10-year, 50, 100, and 500-year flood.
It's only linear because it's a log
flat
scale. You see 1, 10,
yeah,
100.
yeah, the scale's kind of whacked, but anyway, that's what we put together. And then what we did is, just for purposes of discussion, we took and extrapolated the 15, 20, 25, 30, and 35, 40, all the in-betweens by 5 years, kind of give us an idea. And there's a nice little grouping here. If you look at the 50-year on the study, talks about an elevation of 1727.74, and then if you look at the grouping between 30 and 45. 30 starts at 176.88 and 45 is at 127.55. So there's really a very flat window that, I mean, it doesn't take much elevation to increase from a 30 to a 50-year elevation. That's what this is kind of depicting. So
I don't want to scare anybody with great big giant formulas and numbers. This is really a qualitative question that we're
Right.
asking.
Correct.
Like, how often are you comfortable if you own this facility and there's a chance that it might wash away once every 10 years? Are you okay with that? Or should it be every 25 years? Should it be every 50 years? Should it be every 100 years?
That's
That's the question. Yes.
When I first saw this item on the agenda, it looked to me like an oxymoron, storm pond in a floodplain. I guess that when we were talking about how much increase in height we would need to change what effect a flooding would have on it, I think that was helpful information. However, what does that then do to the function of the storm pond? How high can a storm pond be and not really be effective as a storm pond anymore?
It won't be effective in a flood.
Right, and that's what I
At
would.
all. And that part, we're not even really considering here. This
Right.
is more of a physical. This is a regional pond, which we support, the developers doing that. If this were serving one property, it would be their pond. They would own it forever, and if it washed away, they have to rebuild it. Then we don't care. If they want to put it in a location that's hazardous for its survival, that's their risk. But they're asking us to take this one over, and we're receptive to taking a regional pond over. The part that concerns me is it might wash away every 15 years, or if we tell them build it higher or farther up or away from the creek every 25 years, or farther yet every 50 years. For them, the closer they can go to the creek, the more developable land they have. If they can push it, they can't develop the creek, but they can use it for something. If they can put their pond there. If they have to put it farther away from the creek, that might be area they could put a building on. So from their perspective, they just assume put it just as close to the creek as possible. Adam?
Shane, what are the levels there on that floodplain? Like 25, 50, 10-year?
Well, these are the 100-year cross sections. This elevation right here
The pink is the 100-year.
Yeah,
Pink is 100?
Pink is 100.
Okay.
Yep.
What's the
The blue is the 500-year.
that's okay.
Yep. So we're talking about everything from all the 5-year to 500 years are all contained between the blue line and the creek. So all of those numbers I talked about are contained in the distance across here.
Councilman
And we're not
Ruby?
really worried about the blue as much as we are the pink.
Why does it have to wash away? I mean,
It won't necessarily, but if it's dirt, if it's an earthen pond and it's underwater by some degree, either a few inches or a few feet, is saturated and the water's sitting there, that softens the soil.
Yeah, get that.
And the water next to it's moving, there's a high probability that it will be damaged.
I track all that, but can't you construct that with something?
Well, then it's more expensive, and then it just gets cheaper to move it.
Right. Well, okay, that makes sense to me, but you have a hard time accepting it if I know, or with a high level of assurance, it's going to wash away. That doesn't.
Yeah, they could build it with concrete, but then that becomes very expensive. Or build it with riprap along the outside of it to armor it. Becomes more expensive. So it's a dollar amount. But if we give those guidelines to the developers so they can make that judgment themselves, then we know.
We talked about whether we want to replace it, but, what obligation do we have to require these retention facilities actually perform. Because we're sitting here saying if they do get into a flood scenario, they won't perform at some
Right.
point,
At
right?
this point in time, we are not required to monitor whether they're performing or not yet. The larger cities, like Sioux Falls size, they have effluent limits
Right,
on
but
their storm ponds.
through
And yes, we might someday.
Through calculations, though, we're sizing these things. It's not just a pull it out of the air. There's some type of engineering calculations taking place that the facility requirements that are being placed on the developers will meet some criteria,
Right.
for performance.
Yes. Some communities
we
do
may
not
be-
allow these because of that.
And we may be just saying, by doing this, that's okay. Because, that it's okay that it doesn't perform, and that just doesn't seem right to me. The other thing is Donna had the same question, is then if we're going to consider this in any way, shape, or form, I think we need to have a higher degree of construction that best ensures they don't become damaged. I don't think we can just, because it seems to me like it's very case-by-case oriented. We're talking about this place, but if we open this requirement up, we've got other places that this is going to come into play at some point. And some places may be more apt to flooding or different levels or kinds of flooding than this one. I don't know that, but I'm just saying I think we're walking a line that I'm not very comfortable with because of the unknown. And I understand the development costs and such, and I understand trying to use the lowland areas. But I'm just not sure that the city should be the one that takes on the financial liability in the future.
Councilman Billhauer?
A couple thoughts. A couple thoughts. I, as you know, I sat in a meeting that precipitated this conversation tonight, along with Councilman Y. As I understand it, though, one option for the developer is that if we don't go to a regional pond, each individual parcel would be responsible for its own retention. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I mean, that concerns me from, if nothing else, from an aesthetic standpoint, what it's going to look like if all of a sudden we've got a whole host of individual locations out there trying to serve this purpose. And I posed this question last week when we met. Can it not be a case where maintenance of that still goes with the land, that's a restriction or a covenant on that land, that as time goes by, that still remains an obligation of...
Sure, it can.
I mean, as I understand them, that's right in our ordinance.
Yes.
As I understand
yes.
it. That would be a possibility too if we don't feel comfortable trying to quantify or put a qualitative number on that, because like you said, Mike, that's a case by case situation with each development. So I've got a hard time since we met last week trying to come up with what would be a reasonable number, or if we're going to try to put a year to it. And I don't know as I've got any of the recommendation after mulling this over the last several days.
Well, I will say this is not a Watertown, South Dakota issue. This is a federal law that we do these water quality facilities. Every city our size and larger has to do this. And having regional water quality facilities is not a standard thing. Having regional flood ponds that's pretty standard. Those are much larger. This is a 2-year storm capacity, not a 100-year. We let the 100-year flow pass out quickly in the Willow Creek watershed because it's a large watershed, and holding back the peak on the greater storms only exacerbates the flood. So we're only talking about a 2-year event. That's the day-to-day storms that carry most of the pollutants and cause most of the erosion problems. So these are done all over the place. Most communities or developers try to incorporate the ponds into their landscaping so that you can't see them. You don't have to incorporate it into your landscaping. You can carve a rectangular hole and that meets our requirements. But a lot of developers try to make them attractive and make an amenity out of them. I haven't seen that done in Watertown very much, but you do see that in the cities where they don't have a lot of, they don't want an ugly weed-filled rectangle on their property. So this isn't only our issue. I think many communities would just say no to putting it in the floodplain, but we don't say no. We're just saying now that we're being asked the question, what are we comfortable with? We don't have guidance, and I would like to hear from the council, what your comfort level is. And we weren't sure there'd be enough time to really resolve this in the Public Works Committee, and we're planning to bring it up under new business at the end of the council meeting for a little bit of further discussion if you're not comfortable yet. And we can even bring it back later. But we've got a design right now in the city's hands for review that's proposed to be inundated on a 10 to 15 year frequency. And I'm not comfortable with that, but I would like to hear your input, because this really isn't an engineering question. This is a question of practicality. We are taking this over as taxpayers to maintain this, and it may not wash out. It may be just fine, and it may not be once every 10 to 15 years. Those are just statistical estimates. It could be once every 200 years, or it could be every other year. But by standard engineering procedures, it has been anticipated that this could become inundated at its current level every 10 to 15 years. And so I'm asking you if you're comfortable with that. Dan?
I know it aesthetically it would not be real nice, but we put that steel berm out at the lake with the idea that's going to last for a long time. Mm-hmm. That could be put really pretty close to a watershed of some sort. That I know it wouldn't be pretty. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you make them pretty, because we have them in the lake.
Right. That would be extremely costly too.
Well, it would, but so would redoing it every 2 or 3 years,
mm-hmm.
and then not having anything other than washing away of the land.
Mm-hmm. And maybe that's the answer. So we have something that's in the floodplain. It's not going to work periodically because it's inundated, but at least it's not going to wash away.
Yeah, and I know the looks of it is important, but sometimes maybe you just have to figure out what works. I know some of the people out at the lake who put these steel so they can
retaining walls, yes.
Retaining walls, and they're not real pretty either from the lake or from the homes, but
they
work.
Do stabilize the shore.
They do work.
Mm-hmm. That's true. So I think I don't know that are you ready to take action on a recommendation? If you are, we'll go ahead and do that. If not, we can bring this back up for a little more conversation.
I'd like to see this brought up a little bit later, so we can at least get a little more information as to where it would be located at, what level it would be, things of that nature.
Yeah, I think some good points, were raised. I agree with Adam. I believe some good points were raised in terms of Mike made a point that it's a case-by-case basis. Don and some of the others have talked about requirements for the construction itself, depending on where it's located. So you got a case-by-case basis, you have its location, and then you have what kind of requirements are you going to put on this particular storm pond based on its location and how much stormwater it needs to hold.
Right, and just keep in mind that armoring it, doing a sheet pile wall or anything like that drives the cost of development up. Even moving it outside of the floodplain drives the cost of development up. So that's why I'm bringing it to you. This is controversial because of that. Councilman Vilhauer?
I want to make sure I understand procedurally. I mean, Adam, you made reference to needing more time, but we're talking only a matter of a couple hours here because you want to bring it up again under new business is what I'm hearing, right?
Right. And
I mean, are we going to be
so we
any
can
more
talk about it a little more?
Are we going to be any more prepared 2 hours from now than we are right now?
We can always push it out from there.
It would appear to me like what we should do, we should either vote on it one way or the other and then bring it back under, at least we've made a vote on it, because that's what we're being asked to do. That's why we're not doing this in a work session, right? Because we don't want to make a vote at that level without.
Well, this is not, it wouldn't be an official action that the council would take even at the council meeting because it's not on the agenda. We just talked about this last Friday, but it would be guidance that we can move forward because we're silent on this in our design manual.
I think the ultimate outcome was what we would desire is whatever vote or information we get from the council is expected to be a recommendation for us to review our BMP manual, update it to include this topic so that we have the equipment and the measurements or whatever we want, or criteria, whatever we want to call it, to look at these in the future because we have enough floodplains between Willow Creek, Roby Creek, the Big Sioux River, and Lake Compesca that this will not be the only time this
Right, this is
issue
going to, this
surfaces.
has already come up. This came up on the Stony Point development because they were putting the pond below the flood elevation. So it's going to come up. Watertown has extensive floodplains, and I think that if we could have some guidance on what you're comfortable with, we can not stall this project out for the developer. Colin?
We've had this discussion now for the last 2 working days of what would be acceptable in our minds. I'm not saying that means much, but to me, talking with Shane is we take on roads that the developers make, and we have to redo those roads after a certain period of time. And I'm not saying that this is the same because this could, with storm events, it's very touchy with the storm events. Like Sarah was saying, it could happen every year. It's just statistics. But looking at it in that aspect, to me, I thought it was that's kind of the way I was leaning and talking to Shane is go ahead.
Okay, Councilman Roby?
I can appreciate that point. I think where it differs a little bit is in this instance, in 10, 15, 20, 25 years, we have a flood event and it washes that structure away. Now I got how many businesses with water damage? And who potentially has to make compensation for that? Either us or our insurance companies, how I'm looking at it. Is that correct?
Well, this is a water quality facility. There's unlikely that it would flood someone downstream. It just would not function, and it would be, it wouldn't be collecting the sediment.
The second thing I was thinking of, it again, 10, 15, 25 years, whenever the event happens, and then whatever the costs are, I'm trying to think what that city council would be thinking is, gee, why do we have to pay for this? Wasn't that part of the project? Wasn't there a holding pond in there, and it looks like it wasn't constructed well enough to withstand this type of event, and now here we are as a council 15 years down the road saying, well, we have to allocate money for it. I haven't got this resolved. This is kind of some new discussion for me, but that's also going through my head.
Well, the difference too, Colin, with no disrespect or anything, but a road is a public facility. I mean, it truly is. It serves the public, and we know that those wear out and they have repairs. These we expect to be built by the developer, and we expect them to perform and to sustain.
But
Right.
they also require maintenance.
A level, but I really, by probably, good Lord willing, by the time that thing would ever wash out, I'm going to probably be in a nursing home or something. But and then I can look back and say I remember when. But we don't know what those costs are. That's the hard thing for me right now. Are we talking a $5,000 bill or are we talking a $100,000 bill? And again, I look at it, if we're going to have these things in a floodplain, then they need to be able to sustain a flood. And that's my opinion.
Yeah. Councilman Solom?
What are we talking for costs on a project like this? To build one, or reconstruct one?
Well, and we haven't heard
roughly
from the Corps of Engineers yet if this is going to require wetland mitigation, because that makes, if they are going to be required to do wetland mitigation, I'm guessing they will abandon this site and choose one upland, because wetland mitigation is expensive. The actual dirt moving, this is probably not an expensive item, but it's kind of an inaccessible location sometimes, depending on, and this may not be that inaccessible, but once you've set the precedent, you allow it in the floodplain. Many floodplains are, and it's sensitive area, and it's hard to predict. Councilman Vilhauer?
I realize we're not comparing apples to apples here, but I think there is some merit to what you started to say, Colin, and we cut you off. I guess I would like to hear you finish out your thought on that, as far as where you're going with your comment.
Well, I guess there wasn't too much more to say on that, and I think Mike has a valid point as well, saying what he said. And that comes back to the statistics. You don't know when this is going to wash out or if it is ever going to wash out. You really have no idea. And looking at the plans, looking at all this data from this Willow Creek study and trying to interpolate all this data, it's hard to justify either way. I guess it's kind of that's why it's in your guys' hands. You make the decisions for the community, and the people voted for you to make these decisions, and this is a hard one.
I do not want this decision to lie in the hands of the staff. I would prefer that we have a policy by the people, and if we need more time, we should take more time, but we do have a developer waiting for an answer. Councilman Danforth, did you have a question?
Well, I do, and I don't know if it's pertinent or not, but a few weeks ago, we voted to fund in part the concrete, what's the word I want to use, culvert out there coming off of 212 on, was it 26th?
Yes.
Now, I'm assuming we're going with concrete culvert because we believe that that's going to withstand the test of time and
Yes.
flooding conditions, correct?
Yes.
We could have said, the heck with it. Let's just put a couple of round metal ones through there that meet the capacity, and we'll just deal with the thing later. We
Yes.
could have done that. So my analogy here is doing what we're doing without something that says construction-wise it needs to sustain is like us making the same decision to put metal culverts under that, and we chose not to do that. We felt it was the right thing to do, the best thing to do for the public. In this case, it's the public dollars.
Right.
And I would say it's the same thing. It's a different issue. It's the same thing. The analogy is the same.
Right. Building it out of concrete will decrease the cost to the public, but increase the cost to the developer. And the developer doesn't like that.
And I'm not sure where our responsibility lies with that. There's a point at which it's not the city taxpayers' responsibility to watch out for the developers' development costs.
Okay. Councilman
But
Villar.
I'll make the point. I mean, I hear you coming from, Mike, but remember the developer does have the option of going away from the regional pond and going with all the individual ponds. Do we want that necessarily as a city?
We'd like them to make it an amenity part of their landscaping, and then it wouldn't be an eyesore. These don't have to be an eyesore.
And I appreciate that, but we have no guarantee that they will not be.
Unless
Aren't we gonna? Isn't it gonna come down to? They could do that anyway, right? But doesn't it really come down to that? If you have one large unit versus multiple smaller ones that are developed properly, the one large one's probably going to be more of an eyesore than the smaller ones that are landscaped properly.
right. If each property does it on their own, we aren't responsible as taxpayers to maintain it. The landowner is, and that runs with the land forever. When they sell it to someone else, the new person assumes that responsibility. So we're taking on an extra burden by allowing the regional facility. That's a benefit to the developers more than a benefit to the taxpayers. And the taxpayers get the water quality benefit either way. They also get the expense if we do a regional pond, where they don't if we require individual on-site ponds. It's an extension of a favor to developers to do a regional pond. Councilman Roby.
Just a clarification, when you say pond, doesn't mean it's full all the time. It's just
No.
it takes on the water
It should
in
be
the
backing
event.
water up in it. Yeah. So I think we need to take a little break. We did have an update on the assessment projects on the agenda as old business, and we can move that to the council meeting under old business. I don't think there's any new business or a reason to go into executive session, so I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Mantee, second by Danforth. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. We're adjourned. And